About 20 years ago, I started my content-led marketing strategy with blogs that I created in a company that had no marketing budget. So I had to find innovative ways to get eyes on our brand. I did that with kind of thought-provoking, somewhat contentious blogs, and 20 years later, I'm here as Chief Growth Officer at First Focus, still very much leading with content-led marketing, but now much more video-led. So Ross and I were on the sidelines of IT Nation Connect in Orlando recently. This is the second episode we recorded on the sidelines of that conference. And the entire aim of this episode is to help mid-market Australian, New Zealand businesses get ahead by using content-led marketing to drive sales. I really hope that you learned something from my story, and I would really love to have a conversation around anything that this gets you thinking about, or any advice you could give me off the back of what you've experienced.
Well, we're here for a different episode of Business Focus at IT Nation. I'm going to turn the tables. I should be sitting on that side of the table, really, but
yes,
we are here.
That matters. Yeah.
And this is my first go at running one of these, and I thought I'd pick the best guest, since I get the chance.
Strong start. I like what you're doing.
Yeah,
it's good.
While we got some time, we thought we'd have a chat about marketing, and really specifically maybe around content marketing and some of the stuff that you've been doing here and in the past.
Yep.
So maybe you start with a bit of a backstory around
how and when.
I mean, other than your desire to be an influencer and
to be on the face of literally everything.
Okay, so my first job in tech was with a company called DTS, and it was about a 10 or 12 seat organization then, and essentially no marketing budget. I don't think marketing was a thing. There was a website, and that's about it. So I had to come up with a strategy where we could grow our brand awareness, we could create some presence, maybe some buzz around the brand without spending much money, or at least not a tangible cost. There's always a cost with your time, etc. But that would get some brand awareness. And so what I did was I started writing blogs, and they were blogs that were specifically designed to be quite contentious. I didn't try and be mean or nasty, and if I had an opinion, I tried to make sure it was data backed.
What do you mean by contentious then?
So if a acquisition was announced by one telco or another, I would have a hopefully well-founded opinion on whether that was good for their customers or bad, or why it may have happened, and what the difficulties might be in integrating those two busises.
Yeah, okay.
Those kind of things.
So it's okay to have an opinion then?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think as long as it's coming from a data-backed position, and a position where you're actually trying to help people with the information you're providing, not tear them down, and so not detracting from their efforts. But and what ended up happening was that we were targeting the channel, so MSPs like we are now. And over time, we actually had a lot of those people talking to me at events. I read your blog, or I saw that. We had industry publications, typical ones, ARN, CRN, would contact me for comments and republish it sometimes.
So you're creating a blog. I mean, but a lot of people, I'm sure, are putting blogs out and content out, and zero people are actually reading. I mean, it's not, the writing of it maybe not the hard part. How are you getting visibility to this blog?
So some of the industry magazines or publications, when they would say something about, say, an integration or an acquisition, I would post in the comments, I actually recently wrote about this, and then would have that there. So then people who were interested...
Hijack.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, make it all about me, which is, kind of my MO. But and that would lead to then, maybe getting questions. It wasn't, doing that once means suddenly it's a really popular thing, but it was consistent effort over a number of months and ultimately years. I was in that role for almost 10 years, but by the end of that, it was moving away from written form into more video and more interactive media.
Do you think written still has a place?
It certainly does from like an SEO perspective. So what we're doing now, and I did this in my last role, but there's a little bit of admin to it, is if we're creating a video like this, you would then probably get the transcript, maybe put that into something like a Copilot and say, reframe this as an article.
Right.
And then you'll embed the video to say that, but it'll have the words that will help people looking for more information on that to find you more effectively.
Right.
So I think it does. I think, and this is something you're probably sick of me telling you, it's the whole repeat, but it's multi-touch points, different formats. Not everyone's the same. Give them ways to find your message in the way that they most relate to or enjoy consuming.
Yeah.
Like, what do you prefer to do? You're a reader? Do you prefer to watch videos? What's your...
Look, I'm probably maybe my attention span is just not there. I whether it's video or reading, I don't mind, as long as it's actually like just get to the point and tell me something.
Yep.
And I know that we found the short sort of format stuff went really good. Videos with the subtitles, because you're often looking at stuff without being able to actually listen.
Yeah.
So I think that seems to, for me personally as a consumer,
Yeah.
videos with subtitles are great because you don't have to actually be, you can watch it without being ready to watch it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I think you and I are similar there. We're happy to hear a point and take it as read, and then we can probably think of ways fairly quickly to implement the lesson learned.
Yeah, it's fair.
Whereas I can't read really long business books because it's typically, here's a concept, and now I'm going to give you 10 fake stories about how that was implemented by someone in a business.
Yeah.
And I'm so bored so quickly with the rest of the book. So,
yeah, that's fair.
So I guess it's just an illustration of how I consume content, how you consume content, but other people would rather read a blog than watch a 5-minute video. I don't know. And again, some of it's just about beating the algorithm and getting people to find your stuff. So yeah, I think it still has a place, but to a lesser and different degree, the written form.
Yeah, and I know obviously podcasting is a big thing now, and I'd say predominantly, would you say more people are audio only still?
The ones making podcasts, yes.
Yeah.
I think how people consume it. We were here, was it involved? Recently anyway, someone said they were sad when their preferred podcast went off Spotify and just started focusing on YouTube because they were consuming it in the car on the way to work or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
So
it's more the medium, like how you actually...
But see, I actually think that probably just says that the people who are doing the Spotify, uploading the content to Spotify are doing it the wrong way, because even 4 years ago, we started in my last role with the podcast we created there. You can do the whole Joe Rogan thing and have the video version on Spotify. So you can be video first on pretty much every platform bar iTunes, right? I think most people are focusing on the audio, but I would say also I think that's in large part because people are inherently uncomfortable on camera.
Yep.
It's much easier to hide behind a void
yeah.
and just speak, and I think most people, when
the barrier to entry may be a little lower for people.
Yeah.
Just to get started and cost-wise and space and...
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you can even see here, we've got 5 podcasters here today, the 4 American ones, I think, and us. Maybe there might be 6. But, they've all taken a very different approach to the kit.
Yeah.
So we've got these rifle mics, we've got 3 cameras, we've got a lot of angles.
Yeah.
Some people are doing it with a webcam and, just talking to each other and hoping it picks up.
Yeah.
Different outcomes, but probably different intentions behind where it's going to go, and
yeah, we're not the quantity daily podcast get it out. For us it is quality content.
Yeah
And so that's about knowing the audience, I guess, and the what you're wanting to portray as, because I mean I can say if the quality of our content wasn't up there, it reflects on the business, I guess.
That's my view. Yeah, totally. I think if you've got a premium brand, which First Focus does, then you want your content to absolutely reflect that.
Yeah.
And I think less is more if the quality's top shelf. So I was just going to say one thing on there, because I was just thinking about that. As marketing has evolved and we've now got the need for more and more businesses to create content, to put themselves out there, I can't think of too many people who have gone for a marketing manager role and been asked if they're happy to be on camera as part of the role. Like, it's not something that kind of gets addressed. And so I think there's people that have been completely oblivious to the need to potentially have to do that one day, and now they've got to be comfortable with it. And I think there's a real case, I think, for on-camera coaching in the space in business in general.
I mean, executives, and I know we've been looking at this for our team, is that how do we become better communicators as a group? And there's a lot of PR type training out there. Really, when you're looking at executive communications, it's either how do I communicate stuff internally to staff, or how do I do media and PR type stuff? There's a gap in between, which is just how do I just communicate better and portray my communicate my expertise. And I mean, that's really what we're trying to do more of in this sort of it's content creation. It's about delivering helpful, useful content, right? Not just content.
And being genuine in doing it, because it's very easy to put a facade up on camera, like a weird version of yourself that's what you think people want you to be. It's I don't know. But I actually had a friend of the company, one of our favorites, Bonia, one of our clients in Sydney, and she was asking if I'd be able to help her or staff with on-camera coaching when we were doing some filming with her for a case study. And it got me thinking with our recent purchase of Section Group as well, that maybe there's an opportunity there as well.
So I guess one of the challenges that businesses have with, we'll say marketing in general, but I think this type of marketing is the hardest of all, is how do I know how much to spend? How do I know if the spend is making a difference? I'm sure some businesses, I've got this idea, I want to do it. How do I get it past the CEO, the board, whoever's making this decision? So how do you assess the effectiveness of content marketing and justify the spend?
Yeah, good question. It's hard answering it to my boss. I would say, so taking a step back, I think the problem with marketers is because they so desperately want to be able to give people like you that information and people like me that information so that we can, keep refining our spend and make sure it's the most effective way to spend the money, is that we try too hard to get people's data. And we put all these gates up in front of the content to get emails and everything else, because then we can track the buying journey, and then I can give you the answers that you probably want, which is, this is where they jumped on board, this is the steps they took in between, and this is where we got them converted.
Right, so you're saying that the gates you feel are actually not so much created because I'm worried about not sharing content. You usually just want someone's information?
Pretty much, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
And the prize for them giving you that is good content, is their theory.
Yeah, okay.
My theory is, though, people don't want your stupid spam, and they do want your content, and they'll have a negative association with you, kind of keeping them out unless they can have it. Are they never going to get to consume the stuff you're creating? I think semi-gated is better, where you or even drip feeding the full form content if you're creating high enough value content, stuff that really actually lands, then they'll be prepared to subscribe or give you that information. So maybe you can either drip feed it, or you can semi-gate it, where you kind of like preview enough that they can tell it's worth watching. But anyway, to your point there around attribution, so there's some things that are easy. They clicked here on an AdWord campaign, they converted here, okay. But even that single touch or last touch attribution, what if they'd already seen been on your website? What if they'd already actually attended an event? If they'd done whatever, how do you get that full picture of touch points and buying journey to then come back and go, actually, we know that 3 of these equals 1 sale or whatever. So long-winded way of saying multi-touch attribution is really hard. And I think the key is to kind of go, what's the customer acquisition cost we're prepared to run with? And then if you can say the complete cost of our sales and marketing efforts are X, and we're achieving Y in terms of revenue growth, and that we're happy with those numbers. So, MRR growth and customer acquisition costs, those are the metrics to focus on in general. I think you got a higher level.
Yeah, and what's been interesting for me has actually been, while the initial, I guess, concept often or reason to spend money on marketing is you want new customers. But there's a different reason to, especially for us, to market this kind of content, because it's a way of giving our existing customers value and staying more connected to our existing customers.
That's
and
huge,
probably the interesting thing for me has also been, as we get a bigger and bigger organization, it's a way to get our staff across this content as well. And so I've actually been surprised in some ways. We've actually ended up with 3 audiences that really can be served by the same content. It's not even you have to cut it up in different ways. They're actually the same content can be good for prospecting, I guess. It can be good for adding value to existing customers, and it can be good for staff.
Oh yeah, it's spot on. I think the thing is that those are problems that come with scale, and you kind of don't know they're there to be addressed if you haven't worked in a big company before, and I haven't. And so I'm just learning this now. And I'd say the other thing too, if you're creating content that I hope we are here, like where we're just being genuine and chatting and being our normal selves. If we're looking to hire someone and they're looking to research us, we're going to do a better job of getting them on board, and they're at least going to know who they're dealing with. They're going to know what you're like, I'm like, and that breaks down that kind of unknown barrier when you're looking for a new gig somewhere. So I've definitely heard people say, I've come into an interview with them, and they said, I've watched your podcast, I feel like I know a bit about you guys.
So maybe switching to talk a little bit about existing customers then, because we're a recurring revenue business, and so I'm sure other businesses are more transactional in nature, but it doesn't matter whether you're recurring, transactional, you have to be driving client retention through customer satisfaction. Where does marketing and I guess maybe content specifically play a role in that?
Part I'm really trying to focus on at the moment, I touched before about the drip feeding content to get them to want to consume more on a transactional basis. Not transactional, but they'll then pay you essentially for that. I think that when you've got in our business, let's say a dozen like just top level subject matter experts, how you've got several hundred businesses as clients,
Yeah.
and within that, several thousand key contacts.
Yeah.
You know, the best way to get to convey the level of expertise we have is through video. And
Yeah, so everyone gets a bite-sized piece of that
Yeah.
expert
Yeah.
in a way they can consume.
and in a way that actually adds enough value that they can go, oh, that got me thinking, or whatever, right? And so it's add more value, and
Yeah.
don't ask for anything back in return. It's just, this is some good stuff.
Yeah.
Next one is they're going to have a far greater understanding of your capabilities and feel like that you're more approachable because they kind of know who they'd be dealing with. They're not getting a TAM saying, oh, I'll bring this person in that you've never met before. They have a sense of who you are, for example.
Right.
I think when it comes to existing clients, the other thing is you've got to have a really good mechanism through which to speak to them. And so, marketing's role with existing clients is to really connect with them. You've got your technical report, which you do, and that'll land with a lot of the contacts. But and events is one way,
Yeah.
and we're starting to do that more. And I think that's really key to go into that.
Yeah.
E-news is good. It's very old school now, but it's got its part.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to marketing and existing clients, it's about being the mechanism through which people in the business can be known, because it is a little bit one way.
Yeah.
And then events, we're really starting to lean into that now. But I think there's the ability there for people to learn from each other, for us to again have those touch points,
Yeah.
for us to add value.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've missed something. I feel like there's a really good point I can make. But
And I think I know for me personally, the challenge I have is like, there is a lot of customers who I can't spend the amount of time I'd like with all of them. And there's just so much to share. Like there's so much happening. There's so much new. There's always something changing. There's that, it's almost, I'm busy and they're busy. And there's the challenge for me is how do we get everyone informed on all the things they could be doing, all the potential with technology.
Yeah.
It's
well,
a
and there's
challenge.
two things here, right? It's actually quite easy for us to create, as an example, a monthly update where you're talking to, recent events in the industry or your new products or things that customers should be thinking about based on a recent event you went to. But it's another thing to actually get them to consume that data, that content.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem I think we've got now is, particularly if you're in a company that hasn't always had that vehicle, you've got to educate people that now exists and there's value in it and they should buy into it. So work in progress there.
Yeah. So we're talking about, we've talked a bit about the subject matter experts or being able to access those people. You mentioned events, you mentioned podcasting and that sort of content. Peer groups, I know it's another thing that we've touched on. We're members of in a couple of different forums, whether it's industry specific ones or we're members of C Institute and Vistage and organizations like that. Do you see peer groups also playing a role in getting information out and user groups and other ways to connect?
Like you and I were talking about this earlier on. I think that when it depends, like industry dependent, and if your business is targeting a certain vertical or demo, it'll vary wildly probably. But I think that if you can add value in almost any way, and if people are open to the idea of sharing ideas with people with similar problems, there's value in that. I think you've said to me before, the problem is if you try and create a forum, you got to make sure you're bringing something to that forum. You got to have some level of value. You and I were talking earlier about that I popped out the idea of the AI peer group because that is so new that no one probably feels like they're nailing it.
Yeah.
The one thing I've always liked is the advisory group concept, and that's just because I feel like it gives people a sense of buy-in or
as long as you do something with the advice you're receiving through
That's
that.
true.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's certainly the challenge I know being a member of a few. It's great attending and feeling like you're contributing.
Yeah.
But the return has to come at some point as well that you.
That's true. Yeah. And so that's actually absolutely right, because it's one thing to have the idea, but you've got to have the buy-in, and then you've really got to go in with your eyes wide open as to what the cost of that buy-in means for you.
Yeah.
Because if you've got to implement these ideas, and also being prepared to say no in those situations can be scary. But stuff for the client. But I think peer groups as a concept, yes. I just say here at given we are at Orlando at the IT Nation Connect, I do feel like the overwhelming positivity says there's clearly something behind it. It's just MSPs are quite unique in that regard. So I'd put a lot of time into planning and figuring out what problem it solves for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of from the marketing angle. Obviously, the actual interaction with customers is through, for us, it's technical account managers. For other businesses, it would be just account managers or other sort of customer relationship managers. Whether it's new business, you might have more of a sales focused people. What's their role in I guess being experts and using the content and making sure they're connecting those dots for the customer?
Yeah, you can look at that from two different angles. I think you don't want subject matter experts saying, "Hey, go talk to the market about X." You really want them saying, "Hey, I'd love to work with you. I've got this idea. How do we put that together to go out to clients?" And then at the other end, the actual delivery end, you really need. You need to make sure you're creating stuff that the team actually believes in and likes, and you've got to be open to hear that feedback and make sure you are.
Yeah.
But then you really do need them to go, look, if it's adding value, it's my job to add value to my clients. It's my job to drive, positive outcomes for them. So yeah, the marketing team needs the help. And it's actually, it's as much as social media and stuff's great, and people trust referrals in almost every sense.
Yeah.
And that's definitely true with content. And so if you've got someone who you trust to help you drive better business outcomes saying, I think this episode speaks really well to a problem you've been talking to me about, go take a look at it. They probably will. Whereas, because you're going to see them again, and they'll probably ask you if you did, and so they probably will. So yeah, it's a super strong way for not just not volume necessarily, but the right people to be consuming it, and that's ultimately what you want.
So we can't be talking about marketing and content creation without talking about AI, because it's 2024 and it has to be AI related. So.
Yeah.
My opinions on AI, I'm keen on yours specifically in the marketing realm.
Yeah, so I'm actually in the sales space. I'm excited about it as well, but that's largely because I just think, especially if you have a growing sales team, you can't listen to every call. You can't stand over everyone's shoulder, but you can use, speech coaches or AI-driven speech coaches or sentiment analysis to go, that call went badly, started well, went poorly, or, started poorly, went really well. Let's figure out how do we double down on that or whatever. So I think just from that perspective, I'm quite keen to dive into that.
Yep.
From a content creation piece.
Yeah, is it creating problems with the amount of content that can be
I think so.
Spun up
Totally.
in 3 seconds?
Yeah, and that's why, again, we touched on quality earlier on, right? I think quality is a differentiator. It's so easy now to write a bullshit blog, frankly, and it's so easy getting easier to create images and videos that aren't appalling.
Right.
But it's the message behind them. And so content, if it's just to drive SEO with some buzzwords, okay, sure, cool, go for it. And you could do that really effectively, but people are going to switch off. Like, I doubt I can imagine you being a very discerning consumer of news and of content, right? And we're just going to get more and more shut off to things because you can, the more content there is, the harder it is to stand out. The only way you stand out is by having a high quality differentiated product in this case.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. And I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't say that I've nailed that, but I would say that if that's the intent, at least you keep asking questions. And I think AI has got its place. Like a good example would be, if we create this long form video now, there's AI tools that can actually identify and give you the snippets for short form automatically, and obviously subtitles automatically done. So there's a lot of, very strong use cases for AI in creating the content,
right? But
it's not the content itself yet, in my view.
Do you think, platforms, obviously Google and LinkedIn are probably the biggest two for YouTube, for businesses. Do you think those platforms are doing an okay job at serving up good content, or or can they tell that it's AI or it's genuine? Because they have a lot of power in what we see, and they seem to be constantly tweaking the algorithms. Do you think they?
That's a good question. So in the same way that, say, Instagram would say, this has been generated using AI or whatever, that they're aware that it has been, and then treat it differently in terms of what it serves up. I have never thought of that question, but that's a really good one. I would hope that they give it a lesser, they don't serve it up as often or in the same way, because it shouldn't be promoted.
Yeah.
And it would just, if the value of their platform is that, it's what you can find on it, ultimately, then it's definitely in their interest to not.
Yeah. So, because that kind of ties into SEO, really, the optimization, getting your organic ranking up. Is that still a big play in marketing space? The
For
SEO.
sure, yeah. So if we're just talking about, so that if you've got dynamic content on your site with the keywords that you're looking for people to identify with, that's still going to work. Whether or not it's AI generated or not, you're just not going to get people reading past the first line if it sucks.
Right.
So it depends. Again, it's use cases, right? What are you trying to achieve with this? Are you looking to educate? Don't do that. I mean, you still use the words, and you'll probably get the same or better result, but you'll actually teach someone something and maybe get a lead. Or at least better brand awareness. If it's just SEO, yeah, sure, go for it, and don't put too much time into it. Chuck it out. But you're not going to get anyone staying on your site. So if you're happy to have massive bounce rates,
right?
Sure. But so problem and solution that they'll line up. But in general, I think the biggest use case, if you're writing stuff at the moment, my biggest use case for AI is check my spelling and grammar. Which isn't really AI per se, but and any suggested rewrites, and then at least you can go, do I like it better or not? No, cool, whatever. And like I said before, if you're creating something like this, AI does a good job of turning it into an article because it's not starting from scratch.
Yeah. Probably last question. What role do you think whether it's us as an MSP or an IT service provider what role do we have in improving the use of technology in marketing with our customers? Because typically it's been a separate domain. Do you see that?
I think there's a pretty strong overlap because it is very it's a very technical space, marketing particularly, right? And it's a niche. It's almost like a black arts kind of a thing. A lot of the SEO sort of organic stuff, right? Yeah. So I think people are generally confused and they're looking for people to help them fix a complex problem. And I think that in itself is kind of, you're buying the expertise, like you're saying before. So I think there's crossover, and I know from my interactions with clients that they love to talk about marketing, and they see a correlation between technical services.
Yeah, there's not many businesses that don't need to find more customers.
Yeah, you're solving a pretty key problem. Yeah. So no, look, I think there is. Actually, it's an interesting space, and I know it's the last question, so I won't drag it out too much, but I do think it's an interesting space of if you're a managed service provider, you're essentially you're in the business of business improvement, and you're doing it using technology.
Right.
If you focus on business improvement as a concept, it will help them drive revenue.
Yeah.
Help them do something else. Why is there a logical stop? And the answer would be, well, does the admin behind you scale to support that? Like, where is the capacity constraints if you do that? Is it in the service delivery part, or is it the back end, whatever? So that's the conversation, but it's not a ideological, one. I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, look, it certainly aligns with my vision of where we're going, and we want to go is to be that the technology provider for every need. But it does.
We should talk more then, because that's good.
Yeah. And look, and I think probably the gap I think that we have to get over, or the hurdle, is actually, why is my IT company talking to me about winning customer? It's like, what you're IT, why are you talking to me about my customer acquisition? That's
well, ironically, to put a sort of bow on that, given this is a marketing chat, the way to address that would be how you market yourselves to those customers to make that a not weird conversation, because they don't see you as a tech company, they see you as a business improvement business or something, right? So it's how you've framed the relationship is whether or not you'll get that pushback, in my view.
Oh, well, thank you for being the first guest on the Ross version of Business Focus. Maybe the last.
I feel threatened. I feel like I've just lost my spot, but no, it's actually fun. It's weird being the guest, but it's been good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's always really interesting off the back of those chats, having been challenged a bit on attribution, how and when to gate content, to think about how AI is going to change the way that we tackle the idea of content-led marketing, and the way that sales and marketing interact, with the integration between those teams to get the best results, right? So I found that a really interesting chat. I enjoyed kind of telling my story, but also getting challenged on a few things. I hope you got a lot out of it too. And certainly if you want to have a conversation around marketing, and specifically for me at the moment, it's really interesting to think about how AI is going to change the way we market. If you'd like to have a chat around that, I'm certainly open to it. Get in touch in the comments or reach out to me directly on LinkedIn.